Aeons ago, long before the age of Norris, a child was born whose mere cry destroyed the entire planet that he and his parents stood on. The baby lived, though, and drifted through the vacuum of space. Eventually, the child crashed down on a new world. He emerged from the crater, and at that very moment ushered in an age of the most epic and spectacular battles in the universe. This was now and forever known as the Age of the Fist. Okay. Alright, oh wait, are we good? Alright, you might be wondering what's with the collared shirt and the fancy hairstyle. Well, that's because, unlike every other character I've talked about in One Piece, this is someone that I legitimately respect. I respect as a human, I respect as a man, I respect as a living entity. And he's not even real! He's fictional! That's how important this guy is! This is Monkey D. Garp. That was not gonna last long, so I might as well have not even tried, okay? Alright, look, I made a video about Garp before. I actually made a video about Garp and Sengoku together, but that was a while ago. I feel it necessary to make an entire video dedicated to the Fist! Alright, how many fisting jokes are we gonna have in this video? I think we've already had like 3, so I could use his other epithet, which is simply the hero, because he is. In fact, I was just thinking about this today. I was actually driving home thinking about this video, and I'm like, you know what? Garp is probably easily the most famous and most decorated Marine in the entire One Piece world. Seriously, he is. Can you think of anybody else? The only other person that might contend is Sengoku, but even in that regard, I still think Garp is more well-known and more, like, revered, because Garp was the single person that was the rival to the King of the Pirates, Goldie Roger. Yeah, I know, you know, other Marines, like, I'm sure Sengoku and Suru, they had to grapple with Roger back in the day, the same thing they had to do with Shiki and Rox and everybody, but Garp was regarded as, like, no, that's Goldie Roger's, like, Marine rival, okay? And a lot of people looked at it like that, you know, so I would say, considering that he was the one that fought against the King of the Pirates, probably more so than Sengoku and Suru and everybody else, all the other old-timers in the Marines, and considering how famous he was well-known throughout the world, I'm gonna go, yeah, Garp is the single most famous Marine ever, and most decorated, okay? Not only for that reason, because it's actually kind of funny. I always used to assume the reason Garp was considered the hero of the Marines was because he was the one given the credit for bringing in Roger. Okay, because remember, Roger had an illness, and he and Garp's relationship was actually not as antagonistic as you might think. It was something that was very similar to, like, Luffy's relationship with Smoker. Like, you know, they don't like each other in the sense that, like, okay, he's a pirate and he's a Marine, but they don't, like, hate each other. Okay, they're not like viscerally like I'm gonna kill you, Smoker, I'm gonna kill you, Luffy, you know, they're not going at it like that exactly. They used to back in the day, but you know, relationships are a funny thing. They can change over the years. But yeah, so when Roger basically turned himself into the Marines, because he knew his life was ending soon, and he figured, okay, I can either die, you know, in a bed somewhere peacefully, or I can go out like the Pirate King. I may remind you, Roger was the Pirate King. So he turned himself into the Marines, and I'm actually kind of curious, how exactly did that go down? Because the Marines spun the story that they captured Roger. Okay, so the way that Roger turned himself into the Marines, it couldn't have been this really elaborate thing. He couldn't have announced it to the entire world, like, I am now turning myself over to the Marines. Was he just, like, sailing around in his ship and just go, he's like, oh, the Marines, like, some random Marine soldier spots Roger's ship, and he's like, that's Roger! That's the King of the Pirates! All men prepare for battle, we're gonna die today! And then Roger just walks on the ship and just holds out his hand. He's like, oh no, you handsome and dashing Marines have slain me in pitched combat. Please, shackle me so I cannot use my great divine power on ye. And the Marine in question was like, okay. And then everyone praised him. No, probably what happened is Roger went directly to Garp. He found where Garp was at. Maybe he was stationed at a base or something, or maybe he went up to Marine HQ, and Roger just walked in by himself, and he's like up to the reception desk, and he's just like, "Excuse me, I'm Goldie Roger, King of the Pirates. I was wondering if I could turn myself in." Secretary looks at him like, "Are you screwing with us right now? Like, is there? Oh, are we gonna die?" But no, he had to do it somehow. I'm just thinking of how the scenario went down. Okay, but that's not even the premise of this video, okay? I'm just thinking of hilarious ways Roger could have turned himself in. But he turns himself in, they throw him and Impel down, and, for his last days until they can figure out the execution, and then that's when Garp went up to him, and Roger, explained to him his last will and everything, and talked about Ace and everything. So Roger and Garp did have that relationship where they're like, all right, we're enemies, but, you're king of the pirates, and I'm the best marine around, and it's sort of like, I respect you. You do it different than the way I do it, but I still respect you, right? But that's not the thing that he was regarded as the hero. He actually got that title dealing with Rox like 40 years ago, and that's really the thing I want to talk about Garp here, is that his life is really marine history. I mean, obviously the Marines were around long before Garp existed, unless it's revealed somewhere later on in One Piece that Garp is this, like, timeless god, which I would be okay with that. But no, obviously Garp's only like 70, I think he's like 78 right now. So he hasn't been around for, since the inception of the Marines. But, the last few decades, things have really been amping up in the age of piracy and stuff. So he was there for a lot of that. And the thing that's the most notable, probably even more so than Roger, the way that we're talking about him, is this Rox dude. This Rox dude that was the king before Roger's era. I mean, he wasn't the king of the pirates in the sense that, like, Roger found Raftel and the One Piece and everything. Rox didn't become that famous. In fact, after Roger found it, Rox's crew, I think, kind of just faded into the annals of history to the point where Garp was surprised that Hina even knew who Rox was. It was like, oh, that was like 40 years ago. But, suffice it to say, Rox was still a tough customer, right? Back in the day, inspired a lot of fear and all that stuff. So he's the one that is given at least the credit for defeating Rox. Now, I'm under the impression Rox is not actually dead, so I'm not going to go along with, like, Garp, beat the crap out of Rox until he died, or Garp beat the crap out of him, threw him an Impel down, and then he got executed. I still think this Rox character, if Rox really is just the name of the captain, because it was also the Rox crew, so sometimes when you hear Rox, it might be referring to a group or whatever, but I think that the captain of the crew, was named Rox, and then got, either defeated by the Marines or decided to leave the crew of their own volition. I'm done with the pirating life. I'm going to go and live my life somewhere else. And then the crew disbands, and then Roger's era just takes over, and everybody just kind of forgets about Rox. But still, I mean, getting the epithet, getting that, what was it, nom de guerre, I think it is. It's sort of like your battle name, sort of battle pen name, so nom de guerre, of the hero. I mean, that's something rather significant. I mean, they just don't give that out to people, right? So I'm not exactly sure what the story is there, but we definitely need to see it at some point. And at this point, let me talk about something that we don't like to discuss really at all, and that's the end of One Piece. But I eventually, when that happens, I get questions, though, on live streams like, hey, Tekking, what are you going to do when One Piece ends? Or more specifically, when the manga ends? And my response to that is always, One Piece will never end. And I don't mean that in an exaggerated, joking way, like, well, One Piece has been going on for so long, the manga's gonna continue for about another 40 years. No, eventually the manga will end. I'm simply saying that as for the anime and the movies and the merchandise, that's probably not going to end, because this series, this entire franchise, generates a boatload of money. To use a pun, boatload of money. So even when Oda ends the manga, which I'm going to say is probably going to happen within 5 to 7 years, maybe a little, maybe 4 to 7 years is better, but when it does finally end, the anime is not just going to end along with it. You think Toei's just going to be like, oh yeah, well, we're just going to end the anime and not do anything more anime-related things with One Piece because the series is over. No, I'm under the impression that they're going to continue the story, but they're going to use various characters throughout One Piece to just expand the world and tell their story. backstories. And so that's something I wanted to ask you guys. If you could choose 3 characters in One Piece to have like a dedicated story arc all around their adventures, you know, starting with when they first started out, all throughout their lives, which 3 characters would you select to have like an entire arc in the anime focused on? Mine would be Garp, because obviously, like, having him grow up and, you know, like, okay, how did he get, you know, thrown into the Marines? Like, how did that work? And also, he's a member of the D-Clan. Did someone ever tell him the significance of the D-Clan? If so, who was it? Like, who was Garp's father? Because it's not very common to see members of the D-Clan in the Marines, right? You had Jaguar D. Saul, but he actually ended up defying the Marines and going against them. Garp is regarded as the hero and the Fist, and he's been a loyal member of the Marines for a very, very long time. In that Viva Ricard data book, it even said, like, oh, he's somebody that, you know, just like Luffy is looking for the most freedom in his life in the world. And I'm like, okay, well, why join the Marines then? Because that seems rather constricted if ultimate freedom is your goal. And then somebody actually left a comment on that, and a few people were talking about it, is like, maybe the kind of freedom that Garp is looking for is not personal freedom, but freedom for the civilians, the population of the One Piece world. I'm thinking, okay, that might be another way to look at it, but it certainly is unusual for members of the D-Clan to be involved directly with the Marines, because we've only seen that from Saul and from Garp. Okay? So exactly how did that story go? How did he join the Marines, right? His training days. We knew Sengoku and Suru were there with him, so there must be some stories there. So that's definitely one character I want to see more of. The second character I want is Rayleigh, because, like, you know, like, Roger, yeah, but we know just more about Rayleigh right now. Roger, in many ways, is still an enigma. When we find out more about him, I think we are going to get his entire backstory there. I mean, I'm not sure about Rayleigh's, but yeah, we got to find out about, okay, here's Roger at age 14. Here's Roger at age 21. We're probably going to get that at some point in the manga, right? I think we kind of have to. So yeah, it's going to be Rayleigh there. And then the last person, controversial judgment call on this, but I'm going to go with Buggy. And don't even laugh at that. That's 100% serious, because with Buggy, I want to know what happened, you know, like, how did he end up, why is he a clown? So yeah, those are my 3, but let me know below on the ones you would like to see. So yeah, an entire, like, screw it, man, like a 10, 20 episode little arc on Garp's past, sign me up for that. We'll probably get more snippets of it, and we've kind of already gotten that in the series so far, like during Dressrosa, when we had the introduction of Don Chinjiao, we flash back to see some times where Garp was in his prime, and that's actually where he got the epithet of the Fist when he was fighting against Chinjiao, because at the time, Chinjiao's head, his dragon nail, was considered the hardest head in the entire world. Chinjiao actually won the hardest head contest 7 years in a row, so the entire world knew that he had the hardest head, right? And he used this, of course, to open up that giant ice shelf in order to get his treasure, right? Quick question, if he used his head to open the ice shelf and get his treasure out, how did they reseal the ice shelf? Or was it just kind of like a, you know, a thing that just slid back into place? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Eventually Garp showed up and he's like, Chinjiao, heard you got a hard head. And then they clashed, and then Garp, boom, he smashed that head down, compressed, which is why Chinjiao was so pissed off at Luffy for his family line. And at that point, all the Marines that witnessed it that day, you know, the heavens parted, all of the gods descended down, and they bequeathed Garp the title of the Fist. And he's just kind of there with his fist, and he's like, oh, okay. And he just walked away and had a donut, you know, and that was Garp. By the way, he also really enjoys his donuts. I would like to see a donut eating contest between Katakuri and Garp. I'm pretty sure odds are definite that Garp would win, but I think I'd like to just see that as a cover page. So Oda, if you can get on that at some point, that would be lovely. But okay, so that's where he got his titles, and neither of those titles really relate to Roger at all. But yeah, that's something interesting I discovered, right? You think they would have given him something for that. But then again, Garp might have not accepted it, even if they were going to give him something. I mean, honestly, we all know that Garp was offered the position of Admiral, and he turned that down to stay as Vice Admiral, because the way he looked at it, you know, it's way more restrictive when you're an Admiral. You know, you basically have to stay at Marine HQ, as we see a lot with, like, Kizaru and Aokiji and Akainu back when he was just a regular admiral. A lot of sitting at your desk, a lot of filling out paperwork. I mean, you do go out into the field occasionally, but only for like really serious matters. Vice admirals, yeah, they're given a lot more free reign. Basically, they're given their own ship and their own fleet, and they could basically do kind of whatever they want with it. But in all honesty, Garp, I mean, if he really wanted to go for it, he could be the fleet admiral now. I mean, he could be the commander-in-chief, if we're being honest. I mean, Garp has the pedigree, the experience, the intelligence, the power. He has all of it. You know, he could be one of the most highest-ranking officials in all of One Piece if he chose to have that, right? In fact, I wouldn't be surprised, as I don't know exactly how, I mean, I'm guessing, considering how we had it with Sengoku and Akainu, you know, the former fleet admiral will recommend the next fleet admiral, and there might be a contentious point, like, you know, Sengoku recommended Aokiji personally, but a lot of people were also backing Akainu, and so that led to that scuffle there. But when Kong was stepping down, I'm sure Sengoku wasn't his only choice. I'm sure that when Kong stepped down to become the commander-in-chief and he had to maybe nominate the next fleet admiral, he might have nominated Garp as well. He's like, Sengoku, Garp, you two, even Suru. I mean, Suru is brilliant. She's one of the greatest tacticians in One Piece, and she's just as old. All three of those guys, I mean, well, and girl as well, joined the Marines at the same time. So I can imagine Kong looking at all three of them, and, you know, Garp and Suru, maybe they just weren't interested, and then Sengoku took it, and he's like, all right, I'll be the new fleet admiral or whatever. So yeah, Garp likes freedom in that respect, but still, you'd think the Marines would be rather restrictive to what he really wants to do in life. But if you look at it from that other perspective, wanting to bring freedom to the world at large, freeing it from the tyranny of pirates, that makes more sense, because yeah, the Marines are corrupted, the world government even more so, but at the end of the day, yeah, there are still a boatload of pirates in One Piece that are just murdering and pillaging and just destroying lives, and, you know, that's the vast majority of pirates in the world. So, yeah, there might be exceptions to that rule, like the Straw Hats and everybody, but Garp is out there pounding heads that needed pounding, and he's, like, saving lives on a daily basis when he was a Marine. Now, his current status in the Marine is a little bit shaky. So after Marineford, I can imagine a lot of things changed after Marineford. After the whole incident with Ace being executed and everything, Sengoku stepping down. I brought this up in the Kobe video, and it was great, the ways that some people interpreted this. Because after the Marineford War, you had Kobe, who stopped Akainu, and it's like, okay, well, he stops Akainu. I mean, well, Shanks stops him, but, you know, he's the one that, you know, bought him enough time to do that. Kobe still stays a Marine after the events at Marineford, so, you know, how is he gonna, because Akainu's the new fleet admiral, why didn't he just get discharged? And I assumed it was because of Garp stepping in, and then I was reading a lot of, you know, people interpreting this as like Garp going up to Akainu and just being like, hey, you're lucky I don't already wring your neck for what you did to my grandson. You're not kicking Kobe out of here, right? So, you know what, it's headcanon, it's not confirmed, but I'm pretty sure that's how that went down, you know, like Garp going up to Akainu directly and threatening him and stuff. And so what Garp's position changed to was, you know, an instructor class. He still works for the Marines. He'll still do things like escorts, like he escorted Shirahoshi and all, you know, the Ryugu royal family and Neptune and everybody up to Reverie. He did that, you know, but mostly I think he spends his days just as an icon, a symbol of the Marines' power. And so he trains young Marines in the art of the fist. I mean, seriously though, if you're a young Marine, like, I am Seaman First Class, and he's like, oh, well, welcome to the Marines, and it's like, oh, it's Garp the Fist Hero, I mean, the fisting hero, I mean, the hero of the fist, I mean, please train me, senpai, please train me, Garp senpai, I love you so much. So, yeah, I mean, it's a symbol, you gotta keep Garp on for that, so he chose to stay, and you gotta figure, I mean, look how Kobe and Helmeppo turned out. I mean, it depends on who you take as your sensei, I guess, so to speak, because there are Marines that follow more in Akainu's footsteps. Akainu has that whole absolute justice, you know, Marines are good, pirates are bad, and that's the way it is. Gotta do what you gotta do. That's his absolute justice, and a lot of people in the Marines probably look up to Akainu as their role model, as their sensei, and are like, okay, I'm gonna follow it that way. And then there's other people like Smoker that followed more in line with Aokiji's moral justice perspective, right? Anybody that was trained up by Garp probably was trained up right. Trained up in a way that they're going to be an actual Marine. They're not going to be corrupted the same way as other Marines are. They're going to do things, they're going to look at each situation the way that they're supposed to look at it. They're not just going to be like, oh, those are pirates, therefore they're instantly bad. It's like, yes, but they're pirates that are helping out an island of poor people. It's like, oh. Well, that's an interesting... Oh, alright, well, if it was an Akainu skull, just be like, doesn't matter, destroy everything! I'm like, alright, the pirates have tainted the town! I'm like, okay, damn! But with Aokiji and Garp, it's more of like, alright, well, they're helping people out there. I mean, they're still pirates, maybe we can bring them in, but there's no reason to, like, firebomb the entire town, right? I mean, so, yeah. So yeah, that's the situation where he's at right now. The last time we did see Garp was during Reverie. He brought everybody up to the Red Port and then kind of stopped there. And then that's when they had that Vice Admiral meeting where they were all chilling out, just having lunch. And that's when Hina brought up Rox. And I just love those moments, whenever Oda opens up that gate of like, hey, guess what, guys? Guess what? There's a character in the series that I never mentioned up until this point, but he's insanely strong, and he might be somewhere out there in the world, so feel free to hypothesize! Woo! I love it when he does that, and that was certainly a moment there when Hina name drops Rox, and Garp starts talking about him. It's like, oh, yeah, Rox, I'll tell you something, Hina, if they get back together, we are screwed. I'm back in my day, back in my prime. I could barely tango with those guys, but now I'm older, man, if they came back full force, I'm not sure if I'll be able to handle it. Now, he doesn't say that exactly, but he does imply, like, maybe the quality of Marines have sort of dipped from his time to now. Like, of course, you have Garp, and you have the Admirals, and Akainu has, offensively, one of the strongest Devil Fruits ever, but I'm talking like Marines as a whole were probably a little bit more hardened back then because of Rox and then Roger right after Rox. And so yeah, now that I've talked about Garp in that way, let me talk about what I think about him in the future of the series. And this isn't good because he's a really old guy and he's also really strong and he's nice and he's cool and he's Luffy's grandfather. And am I the only one that's looking at that and seeing death flags plastered all over him? Because, I mean, I could see this go down in a number of ways, right? I mean, I could see this, totally. I could see him trying to pick a fight with Akainu, and Akainu, maybe just the rank going through his head. He's just like, what is this? He might be the hero, he might be Garp, but he's a mere Vice Admiral. I'm a Fleet Admiral. How dare he talk to me like this, criticizing me just because I killed his grandson. His grandson was a filthy pirate. I don't have to take this anymore. And then Akainu and Garp fight, and I know right away you're gonna say, oh yeah, Garp would beat the shit out of Akainu. Well, I mean, I thought Whitebeard could beat the shit out of Akainu, and look what happened there, At the end of the day, it's lava, alright? So, I could see him going out that way. I could see Garp going up against, like, let's say if what he said actually happens. The Rox pirates get back together, and maybe Sengoku and Garp get wind of this, and it's kind of the same scene that happened with Shiki. Remember that badass scene in Strong World where Shiki's attacking Marineford and then freaking Sengoku and Garp are wearing those fleek suits and they just take off their cloaks and they're hanging out at Marineford and it's just, bring it on, Shiki. We might have that. Rock's crew gets back together and they're about to make their big move and it's like, all right, men, time to ship out! And before they can even, like, mobilize their fleet, that's when freaking Garp and Sengoku appear, and they're like, hey, Rox, it's been a while! And then it's like, time to stop you, and then they get into some huge epic brawl, like Sengoku and Garp working together, fighting their hearts out against this new threat, and they just wipe out, like, all of the members of Rox's crew, or a lot of them, and then Rox and his top officers, or wherever the hell they're gonna be called, fight against them, and Garp gets taken out that way. Garp somehow gets involved at the fight at Raftel, and you have Blackbeard there. Maybe Garp fights against Blackbeard, and he gets taken out that way. I could just see this going down in a lot of different ways, because, especially when manga, especially shonen manga, start to wind down, get into the final arc, and we're not at that point yet in One Piece, but it's going to happen at some point. We're going to get into that final arc, and it's like, alright, that's when people start dying. That's when old, strong, nice people that were mentors in the series start dropping, and that's Garp and Rayleigh, they both fit that description. I mean, I don't think Oda's he's not gonna wipe out everybody. Like, Sengoku, Rayleigh, Garp, Tsuru, they're all dead by the end of the series. Obviously, that's not gonna happen. But the two that I'm most afraid of is Sengoku and Garp. I really don't see Rayleigh dying. I don't see it. I see Rayleigh getting some more action in the series. I don't think he's just gonna hang back the entire time. But I see him kind of more like a Professor Oak kind of character. Like, you know, after Luffy gets the One Piece and everything, Rayleigh, and after the battle ends and everything, Rayleigh arrives at Raftel to congratulate Luffy and the Straw Hats on a job well done. Good job, guys. You found it. Maybe you could even have Rayleigh there, like, or maybe another member of the Roger Pirates, like Stopper Gabon or somebody. You could have some representative of the Roger Pirates to be there when the Straw Hats find the One Piece to maybe properly explain the significance of what the One Piece is or something, or explain, or maybe not explain the significance, because you have Robin there for that. She can read poneglyphs, but it would be cool if it's like, all right, the Straw Hats find the treasure, they find the Rio poneglyph, they find what that actually means, and the way Rayleigh talked about that was like subjective, so maybe like you could have Scopper or Rayleigh there and explain to the Straw Hats, this is what Roger interpreted it as. This is what we as a crew viewed the One Piece as. But you, the Straw Hats, might take it a completely different way, and that's okay. So we might have something along those lines there, but I don't think Rayleigh is going to die, but, you know, Sengoku and Garp, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling like they're going to have one more final battle together. It's just going to be the both of them. If you want to include anybody else, include Suru in that mix-up, because Suru is also, you know, she was a member of their class, and they were all friends growing up, and she's the great tactician and everything, so you can include Suru, Garp, and Sengoku in this epic battle, like all standing together, and they're old one final time. Like one swan song to end it all out, and I don't think all of them are going to make it out of that alive. I would prefer, sorry to all Sengoku fans out there, but I would prefer Sengoku drops before Garp. And Sengoku's story, I might have to do a whole separate video on Sengoku as well, but Sengoku's story would also be a beautiful thing to see, would it not? Like, flashback to when Sengoku was a kid, and his rise into the Marines, and how he became the Fleet Admiral, that mantle, that, like, you are the head of of all of the Marine fleets. That is you. When the citizens of the One Piece world think about the Marines, they look to you. That would be a story I would also be interested in seeing, right? No, I wanted to make a dedicated video on Garp, but I started talking about a bunch of other stuff. But I think that's actually okay in a sense, because I made that other video about them, and I think I talked about, like, we all know Garp's history. I feel like I would be repeating myself if I just brought that up again. And I brought up, like, his relationship to Luffy and Ace in the previous video, so, you know, you go watch that. I'll put it up here in a card. So, yeah, but Garp's significance is certainly not over yet. It's not just like, all right, it's sort of a thing where it's like, even though I'm out, they keep dragging me back in. Like, Garp at his age, he can't just leave the Marines. I mean, he might have, like, Sengoku as well. Sengoku cannot just leave and retire. No, they have to keep him around, especially for all the stuff that they know as well. You know, like they know about the Will of D. I mean, Garp might very well know about it as well. Sengoku might have told them, right? So, yeah, for all that reasons, you know, there's going to be a time where Garp might have to do the, like, moment where he's like, I don't know if I'm going to survive this battle. He looks down somberly at his fist, and he hockeys it up, and he's like, "Bing! Well, old friend, looks like this is gonna be one last ride." And then him and Sengoku, you could see him walking out of Marine HQ for the last time. They all put on their cloaks, and they just walk out to confront Blackbeard or to confront Rox or whoever. I could see it. You could see it. That would be epic. And it would be a very sad day in the one, like Oda doesn't typically kill off characters, like significant characters, but when he does, they're important. It's an impactful scene. Oh my god, I'm so mad. I wanted this, I knew this poster existed for a while, and I wanted it because I'm like, oh, it's Marineford. I don't have enough wall scrolls that have Marines on them. I need to get this one from Marineford. So I buy it, and then I realize there's not a single Marine on that poster. It's still an awesome poster, but I'm just like, it's the war in Marineford! You don't even include Sengoku and Garp on this thing? I mean, come on! The warlords are not the part of the Marines. That's part of the world government, but they're not part of the Marines, so they don't count. You know, Dofi, Blackbeard, Whitebeard, Shanks, Ace, Luffy. Ah, dang it. Alright, well anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video on the fist. Comment below on the characters you would like to see, you know, expanded upon more after the manga ends and the anime has to undoubtedly create, you know, new arcs afterwards. And hey, you know what? filler, it's actually not bad if it's handled well. I mean, like, honestly, yeah, if Oda, because I'm sure Oda and Toei have probably talked about this before, like, what would happen when the series finally does end, like, what would you want us to do? It's like, oh yeah, here, have all my notes, make episodes on these notes. I mean, like, if they had full access to Oda's office and just take everything that he wrote down and you make it into episodes, I'd be fine with that, and I think they could do a pretty good job of it, you know? Here's Rayleigh's backstory this week, here's Roger's backstory, here's Sengoku's backstory. I'd still tune in and watch, you know? I think it'd be a great thing. All right. Well, everyone, thanks for watching, everybody. Remember to respect Garp. This will be Tekking signing out. Boom!